Hi! So, if you don't know about me, I'm a twin. I'm an identical twin. It's always been kind of a big part of who I am. Like, I am really kind of best friends with my twin sister. And I realised recently that I don't actually know of that many books that have twin characters in them. I can think of a handful, but I want to read more books that have twins in because I'm interested to see how twins are kind of represented in books. So I read a really good blog post recently. I will link the blog post below. It was really interesting. She's a twin as well. And she talked about how she thinks that twin characters often fall into three main twin tropes. So those three tropes are interchangeable. So kind of think The Parent Trap, where the twins are kind of, you can't tell them apart so much that even their parents don't know which one they're speaking to, which I think is kind of crazy. Like, you would know which daughter is which. And I love The Parent Trap, but the parents would know that something's off if they have the wrong twin. I feel like they would know. They wouldn't be completely clueless. So that's one big thing, is that they're often interchangeable. The second one is direct opposites. So think like good versus evil. So you always have like a good twin and an evil twin. Or you've got a twin that is really pretty and pink and girly, and then you've got another twin who is into their black clothes and rock and, you know, kind of complete polar opposites. And then the third one is two halves of a whole. They can kind of feel each other's pain, or they can read each other's minds, or they don't feel complete without the other one. They only exist as one being split into two. So those are the three things that she kind of outlines, and she talks about it more in her blog post. Go and check it out. It's really good if you're interested in reading more about it. But yeah, this got me thinking about books that I've read that have twins in, and I realised that I don't think there are that many. So I am going to start a new challenge where I want to read some books that have twins in. I went and asked on Twitter for recommendations of people, if people know any books that have twin characters in them, and I want to read some of these books, and I'm going to read them kind of in the mindset of kind of analysing how the twins are represented and whether they fall into these three main tropes, or if I realise any other tropes that I come across as well. Kind of relate them to how I feel about being a twin and like my relationship to my sister. And obviously it's a very unique thing. Like a twin relationship, like a sibling relationship, is so unique, and everyone is going to be different. So not everyone is going to be like best friends like me and my sister are. Maybe some twins do fall into these tropes, but not all do, and I'm going to be interested to see how twins are portrayed in these books. So this is going to be a quick sort of TBR video. I'm going to show you some of the books that I'm going to be reading that I've been told have twin characters in them, and then I will come back once I've read them and I will talk about them in more depth. So this is going to be like a kind of two-parter. I don't know how long it's going to be before I do the second one. I might kind of do it as a reading vlog, but I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to get through these books, because I'm going to have to actually get copies of them to read as well. But yeah, I thought I'll just share my TBR for this little challenge with you now, so then when I come back you know kind of which books I'm going to be talking about. The books that I have already read, I am not going to talk about them in too much depth in this video. I will talk about them more in another video, like once I've read them, all the other books. But so the books that I've already read that I can think of that have twins in are Harry Potter, Middlegame by Seanan McGuire, One by Sarah Crossan, The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, oh my god, I couldn't remember her name, and Fangirl by Rowell. Harry Potter has Fred and George, and they absolutely fall into multiple tropes. I'm not a big fan of how they're portrayed as twins, really. They definitely fall into this two halves of a whole thing, where they kind of finish each other's sentences, and yeah, you never see them existing as just one of them. They're always together. They also fall into the interchangeable trope, where even their mum can't tell them apart, and it's kind of a big joke all the way through it.
Fred, you next. He's not Fred, I am. Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother.
Oh, I'm sorry, George.
I'm only joking. I am Fred.
Nobody can tell who's who. They don't have any of their own unique personality traits or appearance or anything. Like, they're literally clones of each other. The only one they don't fall into is the direct opposites, and that is because, like I just said, they are literally just the same person, just cloned. And then you've got Middlegame, which is interesting because they are kind of genetically created twins, but they do kind of fall into the direct opposites trope, where one of them is into sort of books and reading and kind of, they're very academic, and the other one is very logical and they're all about numbers, and she kind of plays chess. And yeah, they're kind of, you've got like the creative versus the logical sides of the brain, but I love it because that's done for a reason. It's kind of, I won't go into it too much now. I still need to do a review of Middlegame because I love it so much. It's one of my favourite books. But although they do fall into that trope, they also kind of fall into the two halves of a whole trope. But I feel like Middlegame, it's not the same. It's kind of, everything is done for a reason. They're basically created for an experiment, and they're created in the way that they are for very particular reasons. So I feel like that one is different. It doesn't really count as much as some of the others. We've got one by Sarah Crossan. They are different because they're conjoined twins. Obviously, they have to do everything together because they're conjoined. But even when they're conjoined, they still have their own personalities. Like, they each have their own unique thoughts. I guess that one is very difficult to kind of place because conjoined twins, obviously they can't go their separate ways and do their own thing. But I think it's done so well where they care so much for each other and they do still have their own unique traits, even though they share a body. Very interesting. I love that book so much. You please need to go and read that, but you will cry. The Poet X, the main character is a twin, but her twin brother isn't like a big part of the story really. He's there and she talks about him a lot, and she kind of, I really like their relationship. They have this kind of very close relationship. They care about each other a lot. I find it interesting because they're a boy and a girl. Obviously, like, I'm an identical twin, so I have a sister, and it's interesting to see boy-girl twins because that's something that I obviously don't have experience with. So I feel like the dynamic is different between them. But yeah, I really love their relationship, and I feel like that's done really well, where they don't fall into any of these tropes. They're not interchangeable. They're not kind of two halves of a whole. They're very separate kind of identities, but they do have this very close friendship, like this close sort of sibling relationship with each other. They are also not particularly direct opposites from what we see in the book. Like, yeah, I just think that's done really well. If we're talking about really good books that have twins in them, but the book isn't about the fact that they're twins, The Poet X is a perfect example of that. That's what I'm kind of talking about when I say that I want more books that have twins in them, but the story isn't about them being twins. And then the final one on my list of ones I've already read is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I'm not a huge fan of this book. I think I gave it like 3 stars. I've read it twice now, a few years apart, and it's okay. I'm not a massive fan of it. But yeah, the two characters are identical twin girls. So it's interesting to read it from my kind of perspective. They kind of fall into the opposites trope, where you have Kath, who is very shy and she suffers quite badly from anxiety, and she loves reading and she's a big nerd. Her sister, when they go to university, they've always been quite similar, but then when they separate and go to university, her sister kind of falls into the party crowd, so she's out partying a lot, and you start to see them become very different to each other. It's really interesting in that way, seeing the dynamic between them when they do become very opposite, when they're spending time apart from each other. It's kind of interesting to see how spending time apart can make them totally different people. They kind of have an interesting, I say interesting a lot, I'm sorry. They've got like a very unique relationship where once they do sort of become very different, they kind of become worlds apart from each other. As soon as they come back together again, their twin dynamic instantly comes back. They kind of rekindle their kind of twin relationship, and it comes back very quickly. So yeah, it is a very good representation of twins, I think. I'm just generally not a huge fan of the story, but I think twin-wise, it's a pretty decent representation, I think. So let's quickly go on to my TBR. I've picked 4 books from ones that I've seen or from people's recommendations that I am going to read over the next however long, whenever I can get copies of them and find time to read them. And then like I said, I'll come back and talk about what I thought of the representation of the twins in them, in case you're interested. So the first one is Girl, Serpent, Thorn. I can't remember the author. I didn't write down the author's name and I've forgotten what it is, I'm sorry, but I'll put the cover here. I've been told that this has twins in it, so that's very interesting. I then have The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. I didn't realise this was twins, like I didn't realise this was a book that had twin characters in it, so that's interesting. I have I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, which again is one that has kind of been on my radar for a while. It's been kind of on my TBR for ages, but I didn't realise again that it has twins in it, so this is really interesting to me. I'm kind of seeing these books that I've heard about a lot, and I didn't realise that the characters are twins, so this is going to be really cool to finally read them. And then the final one is the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. This is on SCRIBD, so I'm going to listen to the audiobook. I'll listen to the first one, but they are all quite short, so I'll see if I get through a couple of them, because I think they're quite short books. They're like novellas, I think. It's going to be cool to see how she writes twins in this series, because she also wrote Middlegame, and I think the twins in the Wayward Children books are also twins for a reason, like for the plot. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're written and how different they are to Middlegame. It's quite cool that she seems to be really interested in twins, that they appear in a lot of her books. So yeah, that's what I'm especially excited about, because Middlegame became one of my favourite books like instantly as soon as I finished it. So yeah, I can't wait to read those ones. So let me know if you've read any of these books. If you're a twin yourself, let me know what you think of the representation in any of the books that you've read. Do you really think about the representation very much when you're reading, or do you just kind of read them without thinking about it very much? Also, I'm interested to see what you think of Fred and George in Harry Potter, because they are very loved characters, but I think twin-wise, they fall into like every single trope that there is. And yeah, just let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on anything I've mentioned, and also let me know if you've got any more recommendations of books that have twins in, because as a twin I just find it really interesting to read books that have twins in as well, just to see how they relate to like my own experience of being a twin. So yeah, I will be back, hopefully not too long. I'm hoping it'll be like a couple of weeks by the time I've read all of these books, but I'll see. And I'll see you soon with a new video. Bye!